June 8, 1917. A mile beneath Butte, Montana, the flame of a single lamp brushes against a frayed electrical cable, and the richest copper mine in America turns into a chimney. Fire races up the shaft. Smoke floods the tunnels faster than men can run. By the time the sun comes up, 168 men are dead. The worst hard rock mining disaster this country has ever seen. Some of them didn't die fast. They died slowly, in the dark, sealing themselves behind wooden barricades and writing goodbye notes to their wives while the air ran out. And every one of those men was down there clawing at the same dull orange metal that is sitting 6 inches behind the light switch on your wall right now. This is where it begins. Go back, way back, 7,000 years, to a hillside in what is now Serbia. A person is crouched over a fire, not to cook, not to stay warm, but to do something no human being had ever done before. They've packed the coals with chunks of a strange green rock, the color of old church domes, and they're working a draft of air into the flames until the heat becomes something almost violent. And then it happens. The green rock weeps. A bead of bright, heavy, molten metal runs out of the stone and pools in the ash, glowing orange. That moment, pulling a metal out of a rock by sheer heat, is one of the most important things our species ever figured out. We call it smelting. It was the first time humans took one substance and forced it to become another. Everything that follows in human history, every blade, every wire, every engine, starts with somebody staring at that orange bead and understanding that the Earth was hiding something inside itself. People were doing this roughly 6,800 years before there was a United States, before Rome, before the pharaohs built a single pyramid. Copper is that old. And here's a detail the modern world has completely forgotten. Long before anyone melted that green rock, they wore it. The ore is called malachite, bright, banded green. And ancient people ground it into powder to paint their eyelids and color their pottery. The first thing copper ever did for humanity wasn't cut or carry, it was decorate. People were smearing this metal's ore on their faces thousands of years before they learned it could become a blade. We even have the body of one of these early metal men. In 1991, hikers in the Alps found a corpse frozen in the ice at 10,530 feet, higher than any peak in the Appalachians, higher than anything east of the Mississippi. He'd been there for 5,300 years. They named him Ötzi. He had 61 tattoos, a belly full of his last meal, and an arrowhead buried in his shoulder that told everyone he'd been murdered. But the thing that stopped the scientists cold was his axe. The blade was 99.7% pure copper. Think about what that means. More than 5,000 years ago, a man walking through the mountains was carrying a tool so valuable, so advanced for its time, that it marked him as somebody who mattered. Copper wasn't just metal. It was status. It was power you could hold in your hand. For thousands of years after that, copper ran the world quietly. Somebody discovered that if you melted copper together with a little tin, you got something harder, something that held an edge. Bronze. We named an entire age of human history after it. The Bronze Age was a copper age wearing a different coat. Swords, armor, shields, plows, coins. The whole machinery of the first great empires was poured out of molten copper, and the empires needed a place to get it. They found one, a single island in the eastern Mediterranean, soaked in copper ore, mined so heavily and for so long that its name and the metal's name fused together permanently. The Romans called the metal as Cyprium, the metal of Cyprus. Over the centuries that got shortened to cuprum. And that is exactly why, when you look at the periodic table on a classroom wall today, copper isn't abbreviated Co or CP, it's Q. A 2-letter fossil of an island that supplied the ancient world. And copper meant more to these people than money. The ancient world made its first mirrors out of polished copper and bronze, which is why the metal got tangled up with beauty and desire. The Greeks and Romans linked it to Aphrodite, Venus, the goddess of love, born, in the myth, on the shores of copper-rich Cyprus. The little circle and cross symbol scientists still use for the planet Venus is the same symbol old alchemists used for copper. and the same one you'll recognize today as the sign for female. The metal of wiring and warfare was also, for thousands of years, the metal of love. The Romans were copper monsters. At their peak, they were pulling something like 17,000 tons of it out of the ground every year, roughly 34 million pounds, a level of production the world would not match again for almost 2,000 years. They left so much pollution in the air that you can still read it today in the ice of Greenland, frozen layers of ancient Roman smelting smoke. Here's how much copper ran daily life back then. The oldest written customer complaint ever discovered, a clay tablet from Babylon, almost 3,800 years old, now sitting in the British Museum, is a furious letter from a man who got ripped off on a copper order. The merchant sold him garbage ingots. 4,000 years before Amazon reviews, the first one-star rating in recorded history was about bad copper. For more than 3,000 years, that's what copper meant. Tools, weapons, coins, mirrors, useful, valuable, ordinary. And then a man in a laboratory in New Jersey figured out how to make it carry something invisible. And copper stopped being a metal and started being the bloodstream of the modern world. Before we go further, if you're new here, this channel covers the hidden histories behind the things that shape the world. Real stories, real numbers, no filler. New video every week. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Whether you're in Texas, New York, or somewhere in between, I always want to know. The invisible thing was electricity. In the 1880s, Thomas Edison switched on his light bulbs, and within a few short years, the entire developed world was racing to wire itself up. But electricity is useless if you can't move it, and the cheapest, best conductor on planet Earth that a normal person could afford was copper. Not silver, which costs a fortune. Copper. Every light bulb, every telegraph line, every telephone wire, every electric motor and generator and power plant ran on it. The world suddenly needed copper the way it had never needed anything before. And the place that answered the call was a single hill in Montana. They called Butte the richest hill on Earth, and they weren't exaggerating. By 1900, this mining town in the middle of nowhere had exploded into the largest city between Chicago and San Francisco. Around 100,000 people, packed on top of a mountain that turned out to be one of the densest concentrations of copper anyone had ever found. For a stretch in the early 1900s, this one American hill produced somewhere between a quarter and a third of all the copper on the entire planet. America was wiring itself up, and Butte was the wire. The fortune underneath that hill was so staggering it produced a war. Not a metaphor. They actually call it the War of the Copper Kings. 3 men, Marcus Daly, William Clark, and F. Augustus Heinze, who fought for decades over who would own the copper. They bought newspapers, they bought judges, they sent their miners underground to fight each other hand to hand in the tunnels with dynamite and high-pressure hoses. And here's the part nobody teaches you in school. William Clark wanted to be a US senator so badly that he straight up bribed the Montana legislature to send him to Washington. The scandal was so disgusting that it became one of the main reasons America passed the 17th Amendment, the one that took the power to elect senators away from state legislatures and gave it to you, the voter. The way you elect a United States senator today was shaped in part by a copper baron buying votes in Montana. It gets bigger. Heinze took his copper fortune to Wall Street and tried to corner the stock market. His scheme collapsed and helped trigger the panic of 1907, a financial meltdown so severe that it pushed the country to create the Federal Reserve, the institution that sets the interest rate on your mortgage and your credit card right now. 2 of the load-bearing walls of modern American government, how you pick your senators and who controls your money, were partly poured out of the copper under one hill in Montana. But every ounce of that copper had to be dug out by a human being. And that's where the story stops being about kings. We've actually been sending people underground for copper for a very long time, including the smallest people we had. In Wales, there's a Bronze Age copper mine called the Great Orme, the largest prehistoric mine ever found on Earth. with over 5 miles of tunnels. Some of those tunnels are 8 inches wide. 8 inches. The only human beings who could fit were children, 5 and 6 years old, sent into the dark with stone hammers and animal fat candles to scrape green ore out of cracks in the rock 4,000 years ago. That was the deal copper always demanded. And in Butte, the deal came due. Beneath that city sits an estimated 10,000 miles of tunnels. Enough, if you stretch them out, to cross the United States 3 times over. And working those tunnels was a death sentence on a slow timer. Between 1870 and 1983, roughly 2,500 men died mining the richest hill on Earth. Cave-ins, falls, bad air, silicosis that drowned them in their own lungs over years. Then came June 8, 1917, the night this whole story opened. 410 men were underground when that lamp touched that cable. The insulation was oil-soaked cloth, and it caught like a fuse. The fire climbed the timber-lined shaft and turned it into a furnace, and the shaft did what a chimney does. It pulled air upward and pushed poison gas sideways, out into the entire honeycomb of tunnels. Men half a mile away looked up from their work and saw the dark coming for them down the passages. They ran. Most of them never found the surface. The cruelest detail, the one that should stay with you, is what that cable was for. They were installing it as part of a new fire safety system. The thing meant to save their lives is the thing that killed them. A man named Manus Duggan, just 30 years old, gathered nearly 30 of his fellow miners and sealed them behind a barricade to keep the gas out. They waited there in the heat for a day and a half. When Duggan finally crawled out to find help, he died. But 25 of the men he saved walked out alive. Other men, trapped in dead-end tunnels with no Duggan to save them, used their last minutes to scratch goodbye notes to their mothers and wives on scraps of paper, telling them not to cry, telling them they died like men. 168 never came back up. When the miners went on strike afterward, demanding the mines stop killing them, a labor organizer named Frank Little came to Butte to help. On August 1st, 1917, 6 masked men dragged him out of his boarding house, tied him behind a car, and hanged him from a railroad trestle. No one was ever charged. The company that ran Butte didn't just own the mines. It owned the newspapers, the cops, and most of the politicians. It owned the town. Quick question, while we're here, how many pounds of copper do you think the average American burns through every single year just to live a normal life? Drop your guess in the comments. I'll give you the real number before this is over, and it's higher than you think. By the early 20th century, deep underground tunnels couldn't keep up with demand, so American engineers did something audacious. They stopped digging holes and started removing entire mountains. Near Salt Lake City, Utah, they carved an open pit so enormous you can see it from space. Terraces spiraling down into the earth. Dump trucks the size of houses crawling along the rim like ants. This was the new American way. Copper won wars. The shell casings of World War I, the wiring of every ship, tank, and plane in World War II. The United States became the copper superpower of the planet, and for a while, it seemed like that would never change. Then the richest deposits turned out to be somewhere else, Chile. By 1970, American companies, Anaconda and Kennecott, the same corporate bloodline that ran Butte, controlled around 80% of Chile's copper, which meant they controlled the lifeblood of an entire nation's economy from boardrooms in the United States. Chileans noticed. In 1971, their president, Salvador Allende, nationalized the mines, took them back. In a vote so popular, the Chilean Congress passed it unanimously. The reaction in Washington was immediate. According to declassified records, President Nixon ordered the CIA to make the economy scream. The US choked off Chile's credit, leaned on international banks, and poured money into Allende's opposition. In 1973, the Chilean military overthrew him in a coup, and a dictatorship took over for the next 17 years. Historians still argue about exactly how much the United States steered the ending. What isn't in dispute is the beginning, a fight over who got to own the copper. For most of the 20th century, America believed it would always control the metal that ran the world. It was wrong, and worse, it had no idea what the metal had already done to the ground back home. What I haven't told you yet is what the company that built the richest hill on Earth left behind when the copper finally ran out, and what it's still doing to Americans today. In 1955, the Anaconda Company stopped tunneling under Butte and started tearing it open from the top. They called it the Berkeley Pit, and it ate the city alive, swallowing entire neighborhoods. Whole communities bought up and bulldozed to widen the hole. Over the years, they pulled about 1 billion tons of material out of it. Then the copper stopped being profitable. So on Earth Day of 1982, read that date again, Earth Day, the company, by then owned by the oil giant Arco, shut the pit down and turned off the pumps. Here is the part that should make you angry. They knew exactly what turning off those pumps would do. For decades, pumps had been holding back the groundwater that constantly seeps into any deep mine. Cut the power, and that water comes flooding in. And when it floods into a mine full of exposed sulfide rock, it doesn't fill up with clean water. It turns into acid, a chemical reaction that leaches copper, arsenic, cadmium, and zinc straight out of the stone. They turned off the pumps anyway, because the math was simple, and it's the same math you'll see in every chapter of this story. It was cheaper to walk away and hand the problem to the public than to keep pumping forever. So they walked away, and the pit began to fill. The FDA didn't catch it. The cleanup landed on the EPA, which means it landed on you, the taxpayer. Today, the Berkeley Pit is a lake of poison roughly 50 billion gallons deep, sitting in the middle of an American city. The water is as acidic as cola. It's one of the most expensive cleanup sites on the entire federal Superfund list, a tab the American public has been picking up for nearly 40 years. You want to know how toxic it is? Ask the geese. In 1995, a flock of migrating snow geese landed on the pit to rest. They died. When scientists cut them open, they found the birds' insides lined with burns and chemical sores. The company that owned the pit, Arco, now part of the oil giant BP, denied the water was responsible. The state of Montana's own labs proved otherwise. It happened again, and worse. On the night of November 28, 2016, a snowstorm forced a flock of around 60,000 snow geese out of the sky. They came down on the only thing that looked like a lake for miles. Workers fired rifles into the water and blasted alarms, trying to scare them off. It didn't work. Thousands of birds dropped into the acid and died in a single night. And the water is still rising. It creeps, year after year, toward the level where it could contaminate the drinking water of Butte itself. To stop that, somebody had to build a water treatment plant, a roughly $19 million machine that has to chew through about 10 million gallons a day, and that somebody has to keep running essentially forever. Long after every executive who made the decision is dead. The wider Butte Anaconda cleanup ranks among the largest and most expensive environmental disaster zones in the entire country. And the meter is still running on the public's dime. The companies fought it the whole way. Arco denied the geese deaths for years. They argued over who owed what for decades. It's the same playbook every time. Deny, delay, litigate, and let the lawyers run out the clock while the public covers the bill. Anaconda knew the water would come. 1982. They turned off the pumps and walked away. And Butte has been paying for it ever since, in tax dollars, in dead geese, and in a lake of poison that will outlive everyone watching this video. So here's the answer to that question from earlier. The world now digs up more than 23 million metric tons of copper every year, over 50 billion pounds. Chile is still number one. The United States produces only about 1/10 of the global supply now, most of it out of Arizona. And the average American? You personally run through roughly 12 pounds of new copper every year, just by living a normal American life. Most people have no idea how surrounded by it they are. There is roughly 400 pounds of copper in the average American single-family home. In the wiring behind every wall, in the pipes carrying your water, in the guts of your refrigerator and your air conditioner. It's in the phone in your hand. It's in your laptop, your TV, your microwave. It's in your driveway. A regular gas-powered car holds around 50 pounds of copper. An electric vehicle holds about 183 pounds. There's more than a mile of copper wire coiled inside a single EV motor. Every Tesla, every wind turbine, every solar farm, every charging station, the country is racing to build runs on it. That's why analysts now expect global copper demand to roughly double in the coming decades, and why the price hit record highs, climbing past $6 a pound in early 2026. It's so valuable that people steal it. Right now, across America, thieves rip live wiring out of construction sites, streetlights, and air conditioning units to sell the copper for scrap, sometimes electrocuting themselves in the process. Walk into any Home Depot or Lowe's in the country, and there's an entire aisle of it, priced by the foot. It's spooled up in every hardware store from rural Mississippi to downtown Seattle. And here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. Copper is inside you right now. It's an essential nutrient. Your body cannot function without a small amount of it in your blood and your organs, helping your nerves fire and your cells make energy. You eat it every day without knowing, in everything from shellfish to the dark chocolate on the shelf at CVS. Copper is also a quiet killer of germs. It destroys bacteria on contact, which is why hospitals are installing copper alloy door handles and bed rails to fight infections that drugs can't touch. The same metal that wired your house is also helping keep you alive. It's behind your walls. It's in your bloodstream. It's in the gas tank's worth of wiring threaded through the car outside your window. Slow down for a second, because this is the whole point. Copper is the one thread that runs through the entire story of being human. The same orange metal a murdered man carried up an alpine mountain 5,300 years ago is the metal carrying the electricity that lets you watch this right now. It built the Bronze Age, and it built the power grid. It named an island, and it named a panic on Wall Street. It wired every civilization that ever rose, and we built the entire modern American life directly on top of it without ever once looking at it. And look at what it took to put it there. A metal we treat as ordinary came with company towns that owned the government, a fire that cooked 168 men alive, a labor organizer hanging from a trestle, a coup in a country most Americans can't find on a map, and a lake of acid that will poison the ground long after we're gone. We tell ourselves we live in a country of fair markets and full transparency. The copper says otherwise. The copper remembers every deal that got made in a room you weren't allowed into. So here's the real question. How much of the world you live in, the wires in your walls, the price of your car, the things your government did in your name, was decided by people you never voted for, in boardrooms you'll never see, and paid for by people whose names you will never know? Sit with that one. If this is the kind of question you find yourself thinking about, drop it in the comments. Have you ever stopped to think about what's actually inside the walls of your own house? I read every single comment, and I want to hear it. If this is the kind of story you want more of, the real history behind the things that run your life, hit subscribe. Smash the like button because it genuinely tells me you want to keep going deeper, and share this with somebody who thinks they already know how the world works. Here's the last thing, and I want you to really hear it. We call it a copper penny. But the penny in your couch cushions is barely copper at all. It's 97.5% zinc, with a thin copper skin sprayed on top, and as of late 2025, the US Mint stopped making it for good. The one object every American points to and calls copper is a fake, and now it's vanishing. But the real copper never left. It's humming in the wall behind your head. It's in the phone in your hand and the car in your driveway, carrying invisible current down more than a mile of orange wire spun out of the same metal a man hauled up a mountain 5,300 years ago. It built all of this, and you were never supposed to notice. Now you can't stop.